as far as this episode on inflation is because I see so many people that want to owe the big bad business and blaming business. And the simple fact is business has nothing, literally zero, to do with inflation. Inflation is all about levers, and it is all about the government. For the most part, we'll get to my axe to grind. And we are back with another episode of the Julius Files. I am your host, Jason Julius. And before we get started, I want to definitely ask you to hit the subscribe button. I would very much appreciate it. Today, I want to talk about inflation, and I want to try and break it down into layman's terms. And if any of you are watching this on YouTube, I invite you to chime in the comments whether you agree or disagree. But I want to break it down for the layman to understand in general, and hopefully I pack a bunch of information in because I got a little bit of an axe to grind in all of this. Because I mean, the long and the short is like you are responsible for inflation. But we'll get to that. I think I'll cap everything, at the end of the episode, where how I tie this all together. But the point is, the reason that I'm doing this as far as this episode on inflation is because I see so many people that want to owe the big bad business and blaming business. And the simple fact is business has nothing, literally zero, to do with inflation. Inflation is all about levers, and it is all about the government. For the most part, we'll get to my axe to grind. But in generality, let's talk about where inflation is right now and how it is controlled. So you have Janet Yellen. She is the head of the Treasury, and the Treasury controls money supply, and money supply is about liquidity in the market. What does Janet Yellen have the power to do? Janet Yellen has the power to print money. Then you have Jerome Powell, and Jerome Powell is the head of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve sets the interest rates that the banks borrow the money and then turn around and lend the money back to you. So Jerome Powell has the lever of being able to control whether money is cheap or expensive. Now, the big ruse about inflation is that our government needs inflation because they make all of these promises on today's dollars, and they need tomorrow's dollars to get cheaper so that they can actually pay for those promises, because they've never had to actually run a business, and they're real good at spending everybody else's money. But the point is, when it comes to inflation in general, and I heard about hyperinflation. I understand that we went through hyperinflation in the 70s and 80s. I was still a kid. I never actually experienced what hyperinflation was. But the point is, when you have money printing to no end that is compared or based against nothing, so it's all based on faith, meaning you can just print an endless supply of it, and you drop the interest rate down to nothing, meaning it costs nothing to borrow the money. So in turn, the banks turn around and literally rent out or issue out the money again, because generally speaking, when you give a bank $1, they turn around and load it out 10 times. So then these are the levers of how they actually play with the money supply, and then it determines the rate of inflation. And then we go through these periods of what has been hyperinflation because they go on a tear of printing an endless amount of money at a very low interest rate. So in order to get the hyperinflation under control, they start jacking the actual interest rates. My point is, these are levers that the government pulls on. It has nothing to do with business. This is all based on government and the bureaucrats that are put in place by the elected officials that you actually vote on. Now, what is the big thing about inflation? whether anybody wants to admit it or not, it is no different than why the government wanted to put the mob out of the business, because they ultimately are the mob and they didn't want competition. The same goes for Ponzi schemes and Bernie Madoff, and they don't want any Ponzi schemes going because we are running the biggest Ponzi scheme in the actual world. If you did not continue to devalue the dollar, if you did not continue to have inflation, all of these promises that the government actually makes that they need to pay for at a later date at a less valued dollar, everything would crash. That is the point of a Ponzi scheme that actually comes toppling down. Whether you want to believe it or not, but like I said, if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to let me know in the comments. But the point is, in layman's terms, this is what our country is built on. It is the biggest corporation in all of the world, and they ultimately have the power to pull on the levers of, on a whim, adjusting the rate, the monetary interest rate that you borrow your money, and they have the ability to print an endless amount of money because it is backed by nothing. And these are the two major levers that determine the rate of inflation. And ideally, they want to hold that rate of inflation to 2 to 3% because they always need the value of the dollar to get less. That is the point of why people buy real estate. The cost of the wood, the cost of construction does not become more valuable over time. It's through inflation and the value of the property continuing to go up because of inflation that makes real estate a valuable asset worth actually holding. Okay, now let me get to my axe to grind, and let me tell you, because generally speaking, I have two reasons why we, the actual consumer, the citizens of the United States, why you are responsible for inflation, and you have nobody to blame but yourself, and you damn sure should not be blaming businesses. Number one, here's my axe to grind. I'm in the food and beverage industry. I sell a lot of coffee and I sell a lot of pizza. And I have long had a core group of people that are delivery drivers that deliver my product. My pricing does not change. It doesn't matter whether you're picking it up or whether it is being delivered. That's a cost of business. I have to have delivery drivers. You call in, you order. If you want it delivered, I have it taken out. If the service is good, you actually tip the driver for the service that you received. Along comes these third-party delivery platforms. I personally think that they are trash. I think they're trash because I don't believe we should be justifying their business model. And here's their business model. So the third-party delivery platform comes in and they say, I'm going to deliver to the public your product. I'm going to take 30% of the transaction from you as the actual producer. And I'm here to tell you, there is not a 30% margin to be made in the food and beverage industry. Like that is saying I take in $1 and I am able to profit 30 cents on every dollar that comes in the food and beverage industry. That is not possible. There is no food and beverage business that actually clears 30 cents on every dollar that comes in. But the third parties come in and say, I'm going to take 30 cents on every dollar that comes in. And I'm going to charge the customer that wants my service another 15%. So a third-party delivery platform that is in fact a disruptor, they have created the gig economy, is taking 45% of the actual transaction, and the best food and beverage brands run a bottom line of 20%. Why am I saying that you're responsible for inflation? Because you're validating their business model. You continue to order off of their apps and you're willing to pay the higher price. And when I say willing to pay the higher price, I'm being forced to do business with them. I cannot lose 30 cents on every dollar that comes in to do business with them. So what am I forced to do? I have to raise my prices. So I can afford, because if I didn't pay them as a delivery service, I would be paying my own delivery drivers. I can lose 10%. So I raise my prices by 20%. I have inflated my price in order to be able to actually do business with these third-party platforms, because you as the consumer have validated their business model and said, this is how you want to transact. All food and beverage that are on these platforms, the price that you will pay inside of their operations is not the price that these third parties are showing you, because we can't afford to take a 30% hit on our actual menu. So you're validating their model, and we are being forced to inflate our actual prices. And now we get to where my axe to grind. I am being forced to do business with them because they are destroying my labor pool. I am not able to hire delivery drivers into my business because they've created this gig economy. And the gig economy says you don't actually have to, because if you're a delivery driver for me, I'm paying you an hourly rate. You're always on the clock. If you're not delivering, I need you to actually work inside the store. Well, these third-party delivery platforms have given you the ability to, you don't have to work for anybody. You don't have to work inside of a store. All you have to do is deliver. That's more likable to the lazy person that just wants to deliver a product, and it is killing my labor pool. I'm not able to hire delivery drivers because they are all gravitating towards these third parties, and they're doing it because you validated their business model and you've made it popular to just simply go to these third-party platforms and actually order a product that you're willing to overpay for, because the only way that these third parties can stay in business is to rape and pillage everybody on both sides of it. And you've literally made them multi-billion-dollar businesses. Like, you have created a multi-billion-dollar industry off of third-party delivery, and their business model is built off of taking a cut from both sides. So you are, in fact, responsible for inflation in the truest sense of, we are being forced to inflate our price in order to actually have our products listed on their platform. And the reason I'm forced to list on their platform is because I do need to offer the ability to actually deliver my product. And I can't hire delivery drivers because these third-party platforms have literally destroyed the actual labor pool that I have always been able to pull from to hire delivery drivers to offer that convenience that everybody has come to love and expect. It's like, it's a given in the pizza industry that delivery is a convenience option, but we have never charged anything more than a small delivery fee, which has always fluctuated according to the amount of gas or the cost of gas that is out there. So you validating them and validating their model is caused actual inflation. Now, why do I say in totality that you are the one, we are the ones that are ultimately responsible for inflation? Because you keep electing these frickin' jackholes that keep lying to you just at election time to get your vote. And then they take their buddies and pals and they put them in charge of the pieces of the puzzle that they're all in cahoots to keep all of the workers just simply working on the hamster wheel to feed the government, to feed that power. You keep electing these idiots. Like, inflation and what it is controlled by bureaucrats that are put in place by elected officials, and you keep electing the same damn people that have shown for years, for decades, for generations, that they do not have our best interest at heart. They care about their own power. They care about keeping themselves in office, and they care about making you believe that there's two sides and that they're just arguing with each other, and one of them is actually looking out for your best interest. It is a two-headed snake. It is a game. It is a ruse. It is a frickin' Ponzi scheme and you keep validating that it works, and you keep voting for these idiots, and then wonder why nothing changes. That is, in short, what inflation is around. All businesses in general are reacting. I have to raise my prices when they devalue the dollar, making it more expensive for me to attain sugar and eggs, just like you do at the grocery store. I have to raise my prices when gas goes from $2 a gallon to $4 and $5 a gallon, because if we are delivering, I have to recover the cost of that. But everything that I have delivered to me, the cost goes up. Literally, when all of my suppliers come and deliver to me, I'm paying a gas charge on the invoice to have the product delivered, and that gas charge goes up or down according to actual gasoline. And why do I talk about gasoline? Because I want to put a nice, pretty bow on this. Because the frickin' moron that all of you, not me, elected into office has sat here and left our borders completely open, and now he's talking about doing something right up on election time to close them. And when he came into office, he did everything he could to jack up gas prices. And now at election season, he's talking about using the bully pulpit to actually bring down gas prices, because he knows everybody has a short memory, and all they're going to think about is that last couple months leading up to the election itself. But the whole point is, it's all of these monkeys that are literally screwing us over and playing with us and keeping us fighting amongst ourselves and blaming the big bad business as being responsible for oppressing people, when it's our own government and you're responsible because you keep voting for them over and over again. Okay, that is my pod. If you're watching on YouTube, agree, disagree, comment. Like I said, leave a comment. Hopefully, you learned something here, because legitimately, like, these are levers that the government pulls when it comes to the inflation rate itself. And sometimes they get over their skis, and that's where we end up in hyperinflation. So what do? They jack the interest rates, making it more expensive to actually borrow money. And then they start bringing inflation down. They're not bringing inflation down. They're slowing down the growth of the economy as a whole, to keep inflation from being 20% every single year, because nobody would tolerate if your dollar was only worth 80 cents in one year and the next year your 80 cents was only worth 60 cents. You would freak out about that. They do it slowly. They need it to inflate at 2 and 3% because you don't notice it. It's still a game. It's still a game where we as the citizen and the end consumer lose. And it's still a Ponzi scheme. And it's still government levers being pulled that does not have shit to do with business. So it's not the big bad business that has anything to do with inflation. We're responding to it like everybody else. And in order to keep our doors open, we have to pass along costs, and we have to pass along price increase. But it's not price increase. It's our government devaluing the actual dollar itself. All right. That's my pod. Till next time. Have a good night.